so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life, well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online, and you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Testing. This thing on? Hello. Greetings, positive heads. It is Magical Monday. Here we go. Let's start it out on a little different note with a little, I'm finding my bearings here. That's all. Happy to be with you guys. We're going to talk about some things, some stuff, some whatnots today. Going to read some reviews. Going to play a really short audio clip. Going to discuss this Osho documentary I've been watching. Have some interesting thoughts and insights on that. I think I might have touched on it before. Can't remember. But we're going to do it again a little bit. So we're going to start this week off with a bang, and let's see here. Before I jump into sort of the topics of today, also power versus force we're going to talk about as well. So a lot to cover today, but it's going to be normal time frame, I think, unless I get on a tangent, which I'm prone to do from time to time. Guess we'll see what unfolds. Before I jump in, let's see here. I have a review by Azure 4040. My favorite podcast. I found this podcast over a year ago when I was searching for more positivity. Since then, I've been listening to the daily shows along with the previous episodes. I love Positive Head. Can't tell you how many times I've been able to readjust my attitude and vibe just by listening. Keep up the great work. It's much appreciated. Aw, thank you, Azure 4040. It is much appreciated that you took the time to complete the circle of love and send it back my direction. It definitely helps to fuel my fire to continue this labor of love. It helps us to reach new people. So, yeah, any of you guys who haven't done so yet, I would love it if you would give me a review. Give me a little feedback. I'm going to read one more here. This is by Mariah on Fire. This podcast is home. This podcast has been a part of my daily ritual for over a year now, and I can't find the words to express my true and overflowing gratitude for it. This podcast has brought me back to center over and over again. Listening in the morning during my commute is one of my most treasured times in the day. Subscribe if you want a daily dose of medicine for your soul. Thank you, Brandon and others, for committing your precious imaginary time and energy into this beautiful creation. Thank you, Mariah, for that beautiful review. Very beautifully written, and it makes me so thrilled to know that your commute is one of your most treasured times, because I'm riding along beside you there, and I truly, it just makes me smile really big. So thank you. And like I said, if you guys haven't reviewed on iTunes, would love to hear from you. All right, let's jump in. We got some good stuff to talk about. I've been watching this documentary, Wild Wild Country, on Netflix that came out. I've been a big fan of Osho's teachings for a long time. You guys have heard me talk about the Book of Secrets, which is, him analyzing these, ancient meditation techniques for attaining expanded awareness or enlightenment. We've talked about that book a fair amount. I've read several books. My band many years ago was Kundalini, and I had someone who visited India, a friend of mine from India. He went back home while visiting. He bought some Osho books he saw in a used bookstore or something and brought them to me all on Kundalini. And those were some of the first readings of Osho that I was exposed to. And a lot of his teachings just blew my mind. He is such an interesting character. And what this documentary has helped me to see is we're going to tie into talking about power versus force today. So my analysis for those of you who have seen it or are going to watch it, or planning to watch it, or maybe now because I'm talking about it, Osho was born in India. He was by many considered to be sort of a modern day enlightened master. He became, this guru that people all around the world followed. He ended up moving to Oregon and setting up a commune there. And there was a lot of drama that ensued, and a lot of, controversy around him. I mean, he was on one hand teaching these profound teachings, and then he had 20 Rolls Royces, and there's all this drama with the commune and sort of a battle between the locals and them, and that's what the show sort of goes into. And what I couldn't help but come away from watching this, it's such a great perspective that really just settled in even further into me. And you guys have heard me talk about it before when I talk about channeling or anything out there. I take all of it with, what is the content? So Osho's teachings, spot on. I've read, I don't know if I've ever read anything I didn't agree with. However, in this documentary, there's some perspectives that he shared that I don't agree with in regards to resistance. I firmly believe what you resist persists. And there was definitely some fighting, some resistance that went on. And then his main woman, right-hand woman, Sheila, was quite the fighter. And of course, that unfolded in a lot of drama between them two in the end. And I won't spoil it, but it's a great example of seeing, here's a guy who, in my opinion, had incredible wisdom coming through on one hand, but yet he's still a human here growing. So this whole guru kind of worshipy vibe does not resonate with me at all. I get uncomfortable when people sometimes refer to me as their guru. I mean, I know they mean it well or whatever, but I do whatever I can to sort of disarm that, because I believe true power is showing you your power. It's not like putting me on a pedestal or anyone. And that's kind of what went down with Osho. But I think it's really important with all these things, and to take the lesson from this is we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Whenever, with people, you get their talents, their wisdom, and their dysfunctions, and whatever they're growing through. So I feel like Osho is really someone who's very, very close to attaining sort of Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. But a big barrier for him, from my perspective, was the ego. And it was said that on his deathbed, he mentioned, you can never fully get rid of the ego. I don't know that you really need to get rid of it. It needs to be put in its proper place, in my opinion. Ego is here to, gives me my identity as a Brandon Beecham in this life. It serves me as long as it's not out of balance, out of check. And the pilot is my soul, right? As Sting said, and I love Sting, and he has a wonderful song. If you haven't heard it, Let Your Soul Be Your Pilot. So that's really what, it's like, as I'm watching the story unfold, I'm like, trouble's going to come. They're fighting, and this sort of, we don't turn the other cheek thing. And I'm thinking, man, you didn't figure that piece out, and that's fine that he didn't. And so, it led me to another conversation we've been having, a lot about, was or is power versus force. Chris Jackson's been on, and he's mentioned it quite a few times. And something that I've wanted to dive into a little bit more is this idea of power versus force. And there's a book by David Hawkins that I read probably a decade ago called Power versus Force that is incredible. And what I will want to do at this point, it's a very short, maybe 2.5 minute clip here of David Hawkins. He's passed now. He's no longer with us in 3D, but this is before his death. And it's him talking about the difference between power and force. And let's just take a quick listen to this, and then we'll talk about it.
The infinite field deals in power. Force moves from here to there. Consequently, force always creates counterforce, as Napoleon and everybody else has found out through history. Forcing people to do things results in a counterforce. If it evolves as a consequence of the field, then it has no enemies, because now it's coming out of power, and power is aligned with truth. Therefore, that which is truthful then and integrous eventually influences what is witnessed within the world, but not in a cause and effect way. It may be delayed over time. Why? Because truth then begins to set a context by which everything is measured. Everything is measured by. And its effect may be slow. So force is quick and temporary. Power is slow. So force is like hitting something, and power is like gravity. Gravity just stands there. Now, force, you have to constantly feed it energy. It's always wearing out. You have to feed it military supplies, battle, money, tax money, etc. Force then exhausts itself and creates counterforce. Power then just merely stands there, controls everything within it. Every iron filing within the gravitational field is at the effect of the field. It has no opposition. It has no opposite. So truth has no opposite. There is no opposite to truth. There is only its absence. Truth is either present or not present. With the kinesiologic response, what you see is, in the presence of truth, the energy flows down the acupuncture system. The body goes instantly strong in the presence of truth. It's almost like protoplasm recognizes that which is supportive of life. And in the presence of falsehood, the arm goes weak, because protoplasm, on an even physical level, protoplasm knows what is inimical to life. The amoeba goes towards that which supports its survival, it withdraws. Even protoplasm, which is an impersonal response. So the kinesiologic response is impersonal.
So, I love this. The infinite field deals in power. Force always creates counterforce. Power evolves as a consequence of the field and has no enemies. Power is aligned with truth and integrity. It's not necessarily in a cause and effect way. So I think for some people, that's why force seems to make sense to them. It's quick, temporary, and you can see it right away. Whereas power can be delayed over time. Power is slow, like gravity. Force is quick and temporary. It requires energy. It exhausts itself, creating, and it also always creates counterforce. That's what happened in the Osho documentary. I mean, as I'm watching, I'm thinking, hold on, how does this same guy that has all this wisdom not understand that, love is the answer to this problem, not creating fighting. And I understand that's a tough one. It's a tough one to navigate sometimes. And I'm not saying there's never a time and place to sort of stand up for yourself, but I think it's really important the way in which it's done. And this is the nuance of navigating between these two, power and force. And it's an important one to really, really check in with yourself when you're in something that is sort of skirting between these two, opposing concepts in a way. Every iron, I love how you said every iron filing is an effect of the gravity field. It's that effect of the gravity field. It's all accounted for. There is no opposite to truth, that it is either present or not. So, this is such a interesting and important differentiation for us to be able to make. And look at your own life and how are you tapping into truth and power? Are you forcing yourself through your life, exhausting yourself? I've done lots of this, so I know. And this to me is sort of the difference between tapping into your higher self and authentic power, flow state, and trying to push a boulder up a hill, right? We actually got a question that ties into this because this book, Power versus Force, which I definitely recommend, it talks all about power versus force, but then it goes into David Hawkins uses kinesiology or muscle testing to actually test, and you hear him talk about it there at the end of that clip, right? How when something is true and in alignment and it's in power, it actually strengthens strengthens your body. The energy points throughout the body, the acupuncture points are all strengthened. And what will happen is if you do muscle testing where you hold your arm out and someone tries to use two fingers to push it down, if you're holding up something that empowers you, let's say an avocado, it's close to your energy field, you'll be strong. If you were to hold up artificial sweetener, you would go weak. This is just one example. You can muscle test all kinds of things, scenarios, questions, music, and that's what this book goes into after first explaining what power versus force is. And then it talks about the map of consciousness is another part of it that I want to touch on a little bit. That's really, really interesting and cool. And before I go into the map of consciousness, what I'd like to do is read a question that came in from Jacqueline. And by the way, guys, I love to get questions from you, so you can write them on the Positive Heads Facebook group. If you're not there, join us there. Bunch of magical listeners mixing it up, connecting, sharing, asking questions. It's private, so you can get personal if you like once you're in the group. And of course, we'll let you in. Just put in a request, or you can send email to brandon@positivehead.com with your questions as well. This one came from Jacqueline, and she said, I'm a big traveler that is drawn to travel to countries with rich culture, and many of these locations have a great amount of poverty. For instance, I was just in Cuba not long ago and love the country and the people, but I always have a hard time with feeling a great amount of guilt. We are all made of the same, yet we are dealt completely different cards, and I come back home to the U.S. with disgust in the things we complain about, which these incredible foreigners would be grateful for the things we are bothered by. How can I work through this guilt and not feel this heaviness coming back to the States? If I still do come back, haha. Okay, so this question really made me think of the map of consciousness. It made me think of, we've been talking a lot about power versus force. It made me think about the Osho documentary, of course. So this is how I've kind of tied together today's episode. So the other thing in power versus force that is talked about is this map of consciousness, right? And there's different... I'm going to talk about that before I actually answer the question. So in the map of consciousness, basically what David Hawkins has done is with muscle testing. Well, let me just read here. It's I found this on personalexcellent.co. The author of this article, all on the map of consciousness, is Celestine Chua. And so what she's saying here, the map of consciousness was developed via kinesiology or muscle testing. I'll not be covering the technicalities here. You can check out the book for that. Based on this test, a scale of consciousness energy level was calibrated from 0 all the way to 1,000 points. Within this scale, there's a total of 17 different levels of consciousness marked by different points on the scale. Moving from 0 to 1,000 mark represents a shift in one's worldview from fear to love. The highest attainable level is enlightenment at 1,000. So, why this is important to the question that was just asked from Jacqueline is because, so depending on her perspective, you can see Jacqueline mentioned here that she feels a lot of guilt. She also felt disgust. Right? These are things that were said in her perception of, these states of different, different countries and how the U.S. Lives versus other places. And so what's interesting with these different consciousness levels, there's 17 of them. Shame is tests from 1 to 20 on, with the muscle testing. So this is sort of the lowest, bottommost level of perspective on things. Guilt is a 30. Remember, enlightenment's 1,000, right? Apathy's 50. So you have shame, which is feeling humiliated, low self-esteem, paranoid. You have guilt, which is at 30. Feelings of blame, remorse are in this level. Apathy is at 50, a state of helplessness, despair, and despondency. Grief is at 75, feelings of regret, sadness, and loss. Fear, is at 100 with anxiety, seeing the world as frightening. Desire, the emotion of craving becomes dominant, and this is at 125. People that are all only monetary goals and things like that. Anger, this is at the level of hate. This is 150. And, of course, this is highly charged now. So someone who channels this energy constructively will move up to the next level and create positive change, such as activism, animal rights, that sort of thing. You have pride at 175. Then 200 is the turning point. Courage, right? Affirmation is the key emotion here. This is a separation between power and force, where one starts to create change by using constructive uses of power rather than destructive force. This is the first waking point, when one starts to wake from his sleepwalker status, it says. Then it goes on to neutrality is 250. Then willingness, optimism, 310. Then acceptance, 350. This marks a second waking point for an individual. And forgiveness is tied into here. Then reason is at 400, understanding, rationality there. Love is 500, unconditional love. Reverence is tied in here. Joy, 540. Peace is, tied into bliss, 600. And enlightenment is 700 to 1,000, right? And so those are the 17 stages. So when you talk about, feeling disgust or guilt, these are all pretty low. They're under that 200 turning point, right? And so, maybe you're getting up there close, which disgust maybe being with anger, right? So, which is right under the 200 mark at anger's at 150. So it's all in your perspective is the best way to sort of address this. And I've addressed it before, Jacqueline. I've talked about an example from the book where, they used an example of someone observing a homeless person. Now, if you were low on this map of consciousness, you might feel pity, shame, guilt, all these things, which are really low, by the way. Guilt was one of the words that you used, and that's a 30. So this is pretty low on the map of consciousness. And it's so you might see this person, one person might see them and feel really guilty and feel really sorry for them and apathy and all those things. That's one place on the map of consciousness. Someone else at a different place in their own evolution might be angry, right? There was some of that tied into Jacqueline's thing, message as well. So anger is coming up the scale, but it's, that person should get a job, that, loser. Why don't they just find work? So instead of feeling sorry for them, you're angry, like they're losers. They should get a job. No one, not taken into account, they may be mentally ill. That this is, in my opinion, a big part of what we'll do in the future is we'll realize that there are certain people in our collective on the planet that need to just be cared for in humanity. They're that's where they're at in their own evolution requires some assistance, not, to be what humanity does that's so funny is we judge everyone, like, how come they don't think and feel and act like me? But meanwhile, they're completely different at a different place in their evolution with a completely different set of past experiences, both physical and spiritually, right? It may be their first life. And from my perspective, you might have been here 100 times and you're like, why aren't they like me? So, so these are different perspectives, right? You have one person who feels really sorry for them. You have another person who feels really angry at the homeless person. They should get a bum should get a job. Then you have the person who is saying, "Wow, what an interesting experience that soul has chosen for itself to further its own evolution. I wonder what interesting stories they have. I bet they're very cool and interesting. I'd like to sit down and talk to them." Now, those are three examples that I just remember from reading the book all those years ago that show you three different places in the map of consciousness. So it's all about your perspective, Jacqueline, with this whole thing. Poverty, all these things, these are things that these souls are going through for reasons that are beyond your comprehension or my comprehension. What I do know, I don't know the history of that soul. What I do know and believe wholeheartedly is it is happening for them, not to them, and it's happening through them. So it's somehow a reflection in some way, shape, or form. They ended up where they are because it's just a stopping off point in their eternal journey too, by the way. So we take it all so seriously, this life and, whatever happened or didn't happen and should have happened. It's like, in the end, they experience it all. I believe we all experience it all. You've been that poverty-ridden person, ridden person. You've been the king. You've been the pauper. You've been the thief. You've been the just one. You've been the teacher. You've been the student. You've been you've been it all. You play all the roles. So when you're judging someone who maybe is in America and take things for granted at this point in their own journey, you're judging it, not really understanding the trajectory of the soul, which is I want to experience all angles so that I can fully understand and not come out the other end theoretically knowing, anything about existence and incarnating in 3D, but actually having lived it all. How often do you see the person who is helping recovery, addicts in recovery because they've been through it? I'm not the best equipped person to deal with a heroin addict. I haven't been through it. Someone that's been through it can relate in a way I never can. So this is really my answer, my sort of long whole episode sort of crafted around this. It's your perspective that's hurting you. It's where you're at in the map of consciousness. Move from disgust and guilt into understanding. These are all things I believe when we pass 110%, you will look at the web of interactions that has taken place on this planet, all the apparently, inexplicable random occurrences and things that to you seem to make no sense and unfair and unjust from a certain perspective. Someone can take that. You will see it is a perfectly woven web where every soul is getting exactly what they need to become the next greatest and greatest version of themselves. There's literally, you'll weep at the beauty of the tapestry that is being woven of perfection. Think about it. Is God perfect or imperfect? It's perfect. It's happening perfectly. It's exactly as it should be. So you can put away the judgment and the guilt and, the despair and anger and all those things. That's just not seen from the lens of your higher self, which is fine. And that's perfectly imperfect too. It's where you're at in your journey, right? So all we're doing here is saying, hey, maybe if you expand that perspective, you'll see these things fall away and you'll move up the map of consciousness in the process. And as a result, your ride becomes easier. What shows up becomes more joyous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is no right or wrong. You don't have to do any of it, right? It's all always happening in divine timing, in divine order. And that's how your higher self sees things. And that's really what we're doing here. We are recalibrating, readjusting ourselves every day on the show to just sift perspectives until love emerges and you see the bigger view, the way your higher self sees all of these things. And it is a beautiful, wonderful, peaceful place to be in. And it is the path to enlightenment, I believe. And I am so happy to be learning and growing as I walk down this path with you guys and sort of get the privilege and honor of feed this feedback loop as I learn and more perspectives come to me and expansion comes to me, and to share it with you guys and to hear what you think. It's just such a beautiful process, and I'm so grateful for all of you. This concludes today's episode. Hope it's helped you. I know it's helped me. Hope it helps you, Jacqueline, to have some greater clarity on things. Definitely check out Power vs. Force, guys, if you're feeling called to check out an amazing book. And play with some of the muscle testing in there. It's really, really interesting. You'll see Wayne Dyer. You can search. He talks a lot about using muscle testing and things as well. But with that being said, I do have a track to leave you guys with. This is from my friend Josiah, who I saw the other day, who, by the way, is going to be playing at Lucidity Festival this weekend. If you guys, in the past years, we've done some heavy promotion in conjunction with Lucidity. I didn't think I was going to make it this year, but as I'm subject to making last-minute decisions to go to transformational events that are near me, I think I may just show up at Lucidity Festival this weekend. So if you guys are going to be there, make sure and check out Josiah's set. Josiah is up-and-coming producer, DJ, all-around magical human being. Him and his lovely, lovely partner, Alex, were hanging out the other night here with me. And hope you guys enjoy his new track as much as I do. It's called Move. Until next time, keep it moving. Love you all. Also, if you're craving more consciousness elevating content, be sure to check out Gaia, which is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web, where you can stream an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. As you all hear me constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to journey deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out.